You should say, ha, that's true for you, but not for me. No! If it's true for you, it's true for everybody. Truth is truth. You know that 2 plus 2 equals 4 here, in Zimbabwe, in India, on Mars, everywhere in the universe. Truth is truth no matter where you go. There are no relative truths. All truth is absolute. All truth is absolute. Even somebody who says you can't know truth, what should you say to them? Then how do you know that? Because you're saying it's true that you can't know truth, but if you know it's true that you can't know truth, then I guess you can know truth. I know this stuff can give you intellectual constipation. Stay with me, all right? It's true. If it's true for everybody. So truth is truth, and you can know it. One more thing on this, on these self-defeating statements, I can't leave you without debunking another myth you hear a lot about. The most famous verse in the Bible years ago used to be John 3:16. What is it now? Matthew 7:1. Don't judge. Right? What are you doing judging me? Don't you know what Jesus said? Don't judge. Forget Jesus for just a second. What's the problem when somebody says you ought not judge? Apply the claim to itself, just like we've been doing. You should say to them, I ought not judge. Then why are you judging me for judging? See, it's self-defeating. People who say you ought not judge are doing what? They're making a judgment. You can't avoid making judgments. Jesus did not say don't judge. He said, judge not lest you be judged. By the same standard you judge a person, you will be judged by that standard. Notice Jesus does not say don't take the speck out of your brother's eye. He does. What does he say first, though? Remove the log from your eye first, then you'll be able to see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. You have to make judgments. You wouldn't be sitting here today alive if you didn't make judgments. Every day you have to make judgments between good and evil, right and wrong. If you didn't make judgments, you'd be dead. Don't let anybody say you can't make judgments. We are called to make judgments. Now, we're called not to be judgmental, but we have to make judgments about right and wrong, truth and error, and that's what we're doing here right now. Okay, so truth exists and you can know it. Secondly, what about God? Does God exist? There can't be a word of God if there is no God. Right? At least one guy agrees. 3 arguments for the existence of God, very, very briefly. These are arguments that you don't need the Bible to know. The first argument is the technical name for it. It's called the cosmological argument, from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. It means if the universe had a beginning, then it must have had a beginner. Well, the scientific evidence now shows that the universe did indeed have a beginning. That the universe exploded into being out of nothing a finite time ago. In fact, some call it the Big Bang. Frank, this is a church. We don't believe in the Big Bang. Frank, do you believe in the Big Bang? Yeah, I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. The scientific evidence points to the fact that the universe did explode into being out of nothing. In fact, Einstein's general theory of relativity says that time, space, and matter are correlative. In other words, you can't have time without matter, you can't have matter without space, you can't have space without time and matter. They came into existence together. Even the Bible talks about this. Paul talks about before time began. Now, it's hard to talk about before when there's no time, but he meant before in terms of being, not chronologically. There was a point where this entire space-time continuum leapt into existence out of nothing. What is nothing? Aristotle had a good definition of nothing. Nothing is what rocks dream about. This universe leapt into existence out of what rocks dream about. In fact, the evidence is so strong that Robert Jastrow, who now sits in Edwin Hubble's chair at the Mount Wilson Observatory in California, is an agnostic astronomer. He's not even a believer. But in 1978, he wrote a book called God and the Astronomers, where he looked at the cosmological evidence that shows that the universe had a beginning. And the very end of his book, after going through all the evidence, this is the very last line of his book. Listen to what he says. Remember, he's not a believer, but here's what he says. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he's greeted by a band of theologians who've been sitting there for centuries. No doubt reading Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God. The second argument for the existence of God is the argument from design. That not only did this universe leap into existence out of nothing, it is precisely designed for you and I to be here today. Some of you may have heard called the anthropic principle, meaning man. The universe is precisely tweaked, precisely designed for us to be here today. You've heard some of these constants, the fact that we're so far from the sun, if we were any closer or further away, we wouldn't be here. Oxygen is just right in our atmosphere. If it were any more or any less, we wouldn't be here. The gravitational force is precisely tweaked. If gravity were different by 1 part in 10 to the 40, that's 1 with 40 zeros following it, we wouldn't be here. It's precisely tweaked to support life on Earth. Not only is the universe tweaked, so is life. Do you know how much information is in one human cell? The amount of information in one human cell would fill 5,200-page books. You know how many cells you have? About 75 trillion. You are wonderfully and fearfully made. You are an incredible creation. You did not evolve from the slime. You heard of the theory of macroevolution? From the goo to you via the zoo? Didn't happen. You were created. The third argument for the existence of God, once again, you don't need the Bible to know this, is the argument for morality. If there is a real right and wrong that is pressing on us, a real sense of right and wrong, if there is an objective standard of rightness, there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no God, then you could never say that Hitler was wrong. You couldn't say he was objectively wrong. You just say it's just your opinion. If there's no standard beyond humanity, then it's just, say, Mother Teresa's opinion against Hitler's opinion. But we know there's a moral standard out there that is pressing on us. Paul talks about it in Romans chapter 2. The Gentiles who do not have the law what? Written on their hearts. Thomas Jefferson knew this. Thomas Jefferson, in the Declaration of Independence, said, we hold these truths to be what? Self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It's self-evident. You know it. Why? Because God has prescribed it on the human conscience. Everybody intuitively knows right from wrong. That's another argument for the existence of God. So you've got the argument from the beginning, the argument from design, and the argument from morality. Now notice this. Without even cracking the Bible open, you know there must be a being beyond the world who created the world, because this universe leapt into existence out of nothing. Secondly, you must know he's intelligent. Why? Because he designed the universe for us to be here, and he designed life, which is incredibly complex. Thirdly, you must also know that he's moral, because he created a moral law. He's also personal, because he chose to create this universe. Not only that, he must be eternal. Why? Because he created time. He's outside of time. Now, those are the same attributes the Bible talks about God. And you don't even need the Bible to know it. Now, the third point, what about miracles? A lot of people have trouble believing in miracles. Why? Well, we don't see it in today's scientific age, so miracles must not occur. Question. What's the greatest miracle in the Bible? What is it? The resurrection. I hear that all the time. Survey said. It's a good one, though. The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse.